Hi, folks. We're back.
We are back, everyone.
Season 7, Episode 1 of Talkin' Baseball.
Thank you for putting up with us for 7 seasons. No, thank you for tuning in. And we want to thank everyone who is new to the game. In fact,
right.
we've expanded. We've started out as just the Lunenburg, Massachusetts show, and now we've gone into several states, in fact.
And so we found we have over 20 affiliate stations that have picked us up. So we thought maybe it's time we introduced ourselves.
Yeah.
Who are these two guys that are sitting there babbling about baseball?
Who are these guys shooting the breeze?
So we're coming to you from Lunenburg, Mass, public access cable, which is just about 15 miles south of New Hampshire. And I'm Pete Lincoln. I've lived in Lunenburg for 55 years. I taught school here, 12th grade English for 38 years, coached baseball for a while. But my two claims for the reason I'm on this show is that last year I had a streak of 70 consecutive years going to Fenway Park broken. I went with my dad when I was 8 years old in August of 1950 and didn't miss a single year's attendance until last year, which broke my heart. But the other thing that we've done is my wife and I have seen the Red Sox play in every single stadium, well, every single baseball town in the country, 31 different stadiums. As a teacher, I would have summers off, and our vacation be planned around whether we're going to San Diego or Pittsburgh or Seattle or Toronto or Montreal, even out of the country. So you can now ask me what my favorite city was.
I was going to ask that. What was your favorite park to visit?
What was my favorite park to visit was Kansas City.
Kansas. Oh, great choice.
I won't explain it.
Okay, great choice. So I'm Jason Smith. Likewise, I am in the family. I'm son of Pete Lincoln and grew up in Lunenburg, Massachusetts. Graduated from high school, in fact, had him in 12th grade English. And the baseball bug was passed to me at a young age. Apparently, I went to one game that I was so little I don't remember, and I just cheered for Louis Tiant the whole time. But I do remember my first game that I went to, I was more interested in the signs changing in the bleachers with the ads on them, and I had an entire ice cream that melted down my arm. But in 1983, when I was just turning 8 years old, you took me to a game, just the two of us, and you sat and explained it to me. And very first time I saw Bert Blyleven, future Hall of Famer, beat the Red Sox 3-2, and I was devastated because I thought the Red Sox won all the time. I quickly found out that they don't. So I've been going to baseball games for over 40 years now, and I like you, I think I had a streak of about 20-something years broken last year, because obviously no one went because of COVID.
Nope.
And we've seen some pretty memorable games over the years.
Well, tell the people where you're living.
Well, I'm in Drake, Massachusetts right now.
Which is an affiliate of ours.
It's an affiliate of ours, yes. It's right on the New Hampshire border, so those of you in New Hampshire, I'm very close to you. And, well, you know, I do medical coding on the side. Well, that's my real gig. This is on the side. But I do this show, and also I moderate a Facebook group called Red Sox Nation. So if any of you out there want to join, go on Facebook, get Red Sox Nation, and there's a little application thing, and you have to answer some questions, and we'll let you in. And it's all about, we try to keep it positive and keep it respectful discussion. You know, if you're going to go in and boo the team and drop F-bombs, it's not the group for you.
And you have quite a massive number of followers.
It's about 15,000 fans in the group, actually, and growing all the time. So come on in and say hi, and we'll have some good discussions. And I was going to ask you, actually, and maybe you can ask me back, for 70 years, what was your favorite game that you ever went to?
Actually,
what was the best game
I
you
have
ever
that
saw?
answer prepared
You do?
because I have my top 3.
Oh, do you really? Oh, cool. Great.
But the top game of all time was a game the Red Sox lost. It was the 1978 playoff game against the Yankees, where the season ended at a tie with each team's record of 99 wins. And I was fortunate enough to be able to get tickets to the game the next day. I skipped school and went down and saw a game that the Sox lost 5-4, but it was the most electric ball game I've ever been to. Nobody drank beer. Nobody walked around the park. Every single pitch was like electric. It was a beautiful October 2nd day, bright sunshine, and the Sox went ahead. Then, of course, the famous Bucky Dent home run put them behind. But they came back, and it came down to a point where the men first and third with 2 outs and Yaz up and a chance to be the all-time hero. He popped out to end the game, and the thing about it was nobody moved. Nobody booed. They just sat there saying, "We want a mulligan."
Right. Yeah, right. That's it.
I've never been to a game which was so intense. It was great.
Even though they lost, it was
That's
a
right,
great
even
game.
though they lost. How about
Game.
yourself?
My favorite game, one you were at, well, we were there together, and we actually briefly appear on the Nesson replays if you watch the game.
That's right.
We were at the game April of 1986 where Roger Clemens struck out 20 batters. He struck out 20 Mariners. The record's since been tied a couple times, but he broke the record that night. And it was the same thing. It was an electric atmosphere after a while. It was only about 15,000 fans, which is kind of hard for people now to fathom, where every game is almost a sellout. But as every strikeout happened, the crowd got more and more into it. And this wasn't the days of they flash stats up on the board all the time. You kind of had to keep track in your head how many strikeouts he had after a while. And at the end of the game, it seemed like the park was full. And it was only about 15,000 people.
15,000.
And there was just a whole atmosphere. It wasn't like going to Fenway now. It was sort of it was sort of an event rather than, everybody with the corporate seats. It was a whole bunch of hooligans out on the bleachers at that time, actually.
Because they hadn't won any World
They had
Series
won
then.
the World Series, and they used to smoke in the bleachers, and a guy was throwing candy bars out for every Clemens strikeout. Little did he know he'd have to go back under the stands to get 2 extra bags to keep everybody happy in the bleachers as he was throwing them around. Same thing. It was just an electric night, and think of how many games have been played in the history of baseball, and you're at one where a record gets set.
It was just
amazing.
I can remember. I knew the record for the Red Sox was 17, and I knew that someone had struck out 19 in the National League. I think it was Steve Carlton, maybe.
Carlton did it, yes.
But I said he's getting near the record, and when he struck out the 18th guy at the end of the 8th inning, I said, "Oh my God, that's the record." And then when he struck out the first 2 guys,
yes, he did.
He actually did not strike out the last guy up.
Right.
I remember standing there thinking, I had this warm feeling in my chest. We almost didn't go because it was a miserable,
horrible, rainy, cold night in April.
All the games that have been played, we just saw something that has never happened.
And think of the odds of that. I mean, it was an amazing experience, and people forget. Nesson replays this game once in a while. They were actually losing for the first 7 innings.
That's right.
It's a Dewey hit a homer to bail them out late in the
That's
game because Gorman Thomas hit a homer, and it was 1-0. The Mariners were in for a long time in that game. But you can see us on the Nesson replays on Dewey's homer. You see these 2 dudes kind of running behind, and the ball landed in the net that used to be out there at center field. And if the net hadn't been there, we would have caught the ball.
They replay it all the time. You can see this Hulk in a big red T-shirt run around and stand there and look down in despair. My chance to catch the home run in the Roger game.
So, in fact, Clemens was always my favorite player growing up because of that game, and just to be a part of history was amazing.
Yeah. So that's who we are, and we've been talking baseball, of course, all our lives, and we've been doing this show now. This is our 51st show. Looking forward to a season which, at this point, looks like it's going to be played in its entirety.
It looks like they're going to go ahead and have a 162-game season.
That's right.
Fans in the stand is questionable. They're talking 50%. They're talking 25%.
Yeah.
And there are already players. I know the guy we just got in the trade for Benintendi has to miss some time for COVID, so of course that's going to happen. But they're planning for the whole season.
Pitchers and catchers in spring training. So our next show will lay out what the Red Sox have to try to keep up with the rest of them, because they've had a whole different makeover.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
And they don't have the stars they used to have, but maybe sometimes there's a diamond in the rough.
Well, I think there are a couple, to be
out.
honest with you. I think they'll be better than people think.
So anyway, some things have happened since our last show we'd like to talk about. And the first one is that Dustin Pedroia has retired. A year ahead of his contract. As everyone knows, he came up in 2007. He was the Rookie of the Year, and the Red Sox won the World Series. 2008, he was the Most Valuable Player. Dynamite Hall of Fame start. Mm-hmm. And for the next few years, right through 3-4 next years, same thing. Big average, big happenings. Well, it happens so often, the second baseman especially, but so often to players, they get unfortunately injured and can't recover, and that's the end of their career.
When he hit age 30, he started to have knee problems, and he came back and played, even a couple seasons, but he was never quite the same after age 30 with his knee injuries.
Before they changed the rule about taking men out at second base, Manny Machado went into him one night, and he was out pretty much the rest of the year. He just aggressively went out to hurt him.
Yeah, and people blame Machado. He had knee problems for the 2 years prior to that. I think it was just a matter of time and a matter of how many plays before that knee was going to give out. And he missed a few weeks, came back, and then he missed a couple months, and then came back. And that was 2017, and that was the last year that he really played full time. And after the 17 season, he was.
And then they signed him for a 6-year contract. Here you go. Giving a person a long contract is always a dangerous thing to do.
Right.
And so for the last 2 seasons, he hasn't played at all. And I think he finally decided why stay on the roster and forfeit his pay for the last year.
Right, and it's really too bad. Like we said, he was on the track for Hall of Fame. He had 4 Gold Gloves. He won a Silver Slugger, .299 career batting average. He had one more hit, he'd be a career 300 hitter.
But there's so many other people you can make comparisons with the same thing. Tony Conigliaro.
Yes.
Jerry Remy.
Sure.
Nomar.
Right.
David Wright.
Sure.
All players that should have been Hall of Famers and unfortunately got hurt.
They got hurt. Yep.
That's how something like Cal Ripken playing 2,600 games in a row is such a feat that just is never going to happen.
Well, nobody even plays 162 games a year anymore, let alone that many. And the thing about Petey is that it went beyond his stats. He was a little guy, always told that he was never going to make it. He's probably shorter than I am, or maybe my height.
I have a story about that.
And he was sort of like, he reminded me a lot of Pete Rose, that he willed himself to do better. You could just see every single pitch he was just so intense. He was locked in, and he got mad at himself when he made it out. I mean, he would start throwing helmets and things like that.
And he had a funny way of running because he was short. He'd run and swing his arms like this as he ran, but don't get in his way.
It worked. He had 140 career homers and 138 steals. Now that's a combination of power and speed.
I just have one little personal story to tell about him. He was listed at 5'9", okay? We get a chance to go to spring training on the opening day of spring training. Now, spring training now is not like it used to be. You can't go out and mingle with the players. But I was down with Gordon Needs, my friend from the Boston Globe, and he let me get on the field to take some photographs of batting practice. And I was taking pictures of Mike Lowell and Ortiz. Somebody bumped into me from behind. And I said, hey, and I turned around because I thought it might be the bat boy. It was Dustin Pedroia, and his head hit my armpit. He's not 5'9".
No,
he's not 5'9". No. I said, oops, excuse me.
Oh, sorry.
Excuse me.
No, my favorite Pedroia story, and this is how he got by, is that, like I said, he willed himself to do better, and he just had an attitude of just having to one-up everyone. When they went out to the World Series in Colorado in 2007, if you remember, Petey hit a home run off Jeff Francis in Game 1 to lead off the game, and the Sox won the game. When they got to Colorado, the security guy at the gate in the Rockies Stadium didn't believe that Pedroia was a ball player because he was so short. And he was with Peter Gammons, so everybody knows what Peter Gammons is. And he looked right at the security guy, and he said, oh, you don't know who I am? Ask Peter Gammons. In fact, ask Jeff bleeping Francis who I am. That was his response. Ask Jeff bleeping Francis who I am. Oh yeah, and then they let him in the park, and because they figured out who he was. So
we were on a road trip to see the Giants, and they were playing Colorado the day before. They were playing the Giants. He got 3 home runs in that game.
Yeah, I remember that game.
Home runs.
It was an 11-10 game, I think, or some crazy score like that.
So for his size, boy, it was a lot of. He was the powerful little Pistol Pete. He was.
Yeah. So farewell, Petey. I'm sure he'll be a Red Sox Hall of Famer down the road.
That's right.
And hopefully, I hope this coming season they give him some kind of day, a Petey day.
I'm sure they will.
With how many Red Sox players have 3 World Series rings? He has 3, which is pretty hard to come by. I think Ortiz is the only other one that has 3 with the Red Sox.
So secondly, something that happened that was very sad. One of baseball greats, Hank Aaron, passed away last week. And for you younger folks, you can't imagine how good Hank Aaron was. in the post-war section, only Mays and Mantle were better. He holds all sorts of almost extraordinary records. He's got 3,700 hits, 755 home runs. Repeat, 755 home runs. He's the all-time major league leader in RBIs with 2,297, and he hit 305 and stole 240 bases.
Yeah, he had 6,856 total bases in his career. Hit 362 with 6 homers in the postseason too. So
right.
he was at his best when the chips were down. And this is really amazing. For those of you in advanced numbers that you know what OPS plus is, he went 18 straight seasons and his OPS plus was never under 140. That's astounding. That means every single year for 18 years he was 40% better than the rest of the league. It's really incredible.
He was in 25 All-Star games. That's the record. He had 3 Gold Gloves. He was into the top 12 of MVP 17 times, and he was the MVP in 1957. And when he went up to be eligible for the Hall of Fame, 9 voters didn't vote for him.
Well, we'll get to that later in the show. That'll tee it up for a later conversation.
And they talk about money ball players make. His top salary was $240,000,
right.
which today is 1/2 the major league minimum.
Right. Little different times. And if you ask any baseball fan, the 755 home runs is an iconic number. It's one of those numbers, it's like 2130 was Gehrig. It's 755, everyone knows what you're talking about when you hear that number.
Now we've got a special clip we want to show you of Hank Aaron's career, one of the definitive moments of baseball.
Once again, a standing ovation for Henry Aaron. So the confrontation for the second time. Aaron walked in the second inning. He means the tying run at the plate now. So we'll see what Downing does. Al at the belt delivers, and he's low. Ball 1. And that just adds to the pressure. The crowd booing. Downing has to ignore the sound effects and stay a professional and pitch his game. 1 ball and no strikes. Aaron waiting. The outfield deep and straight away. Fastball is a high drive into deep left center field. Buckner goes back to the fence. It is gone. Marvelous moment for baseball. What a marvelous moment for Atlanta and the state of Georgia. What a marvelous moment for the country and the world. A black man is getting a standing ovation in the...
I say definitive moments. It's one of the definitive moments in our nation's history. Look what just happened. A black man in Georgia hit a home run, and 40,000 people rose to their feet and cheered a black man for breaking a white man's record in 1974. That did more for integration in this country than any speech by any preacher or any speech by any politician.
Absolutely.
The platform of sports brings about integration better than any other platform.
Absolutely.
It was an amazing moment.
I think the rest of the country was rooting for him too. It wasn't just a special interest of just the team. Everyone was rooting for this man to break the record.
Now, interestingly, if you noticed, as he rounded second base, 2 fellows came rushing out to pat him on the back. Now, prior, for weeks, well, actually it was only a week because it was early in the season, he had been receiving death threats by the dozens. The FBI was so concerned that he might be harmed in trying to break this record that they had snipers on the roof in the Atlanta Stadium, and if anyone looked like they was going to be causing trouble, they were ready to shoot to kill. Now, I read the book about this event,
right.
and here come these two guys running out of the stands, and there was one chief FBI guy saying, ready, shoot or not.
Yeah.
And he had to make a split-second decision as to whether or not they were just nutty fans or actually going to do him harm. And they finally decided, don't shoot him. And it turned out there were two kids from Georgia Tech nearby, but they came within a couple of seconds of losing their lives.
Right. Yeah, it was a little different in the 70s. There were a lot more fans on the field then.
That's right.
Remember the Chris Chambliss home run?
But they were expecting the possibility of, because of
some crackpot.
The volumes of hate mail he got from all around the country, and they had to be prepared to protect him. And so here come these guys running out there. They didn't look like terrorists.
No,
they just looked like drunk college kids.
Drunk college kids.
But they don't know how close they came to not seeing him cross home plate.
Right.
But that's just, to me, one of the greatest moments in all of sports.
Not just in the sports, in the country.
In the country. Remember, 1974, civil rights in the South was not pleasant.
Right.
And to have a man do something as he did, and to break a record held by one of the most venerable white men in the sport, and to have the whole country cheering for him was remarkable. That to me is one of the epic civil rights moments in history.
Absolutely, I 100% agree. And if we had more time, we'd get into it. There's been a bad run in baseball. We've lost 10 Hall of Famers in the last year, which is really too bad. Actually, I think isn't Willie Mays the oldest one alive now?
Yes,
I believe he is.
He's 90.
He's 90. He's the oldest one. And our heroes are dying off. Sadly, it happens.
Our heroes. We go back away.
We go back away.
Take your vitamins.
Yes, I know.
One other thing about that, at the beginning, we showed Hank Aaron's card. Now, if you're a card collector, cards used to be just fun things for kids to swap and trade, collect, and they were worth nothing. This particular card is Hank Aaron's 1954 Topps rookie card. Generally, it sells for about $2,500 to $3,000. The day after he died, I saw this card offered on eBay for $6,500. People take advantage of even something like this. Only Mays and Mantle cards are worth more than that.
Yep, the Mantle 52 Mantle is worth the most.
And I bought one for a penny one time.
Right.
I wish I saved it.
Right. But they weren't collectibles then. Nobody thought anything of it then. There wasn't a souvenir market for that.
And there was no such thing as a rookie card or a stock. You tried to get the set.
Right. And that was it.
Be some schmo from Los Angeles Browns or somebody. You couldn't get the damn guy.
Right. Or the worst was when you were missing one of the checklists, because then you didn't even know who you were missing. That was the worst one. I remember, was it the 87 or 88 set? I think the last one I got was the checklist. It's like, thanks a lot.
So farewell, Hank.
Farewell, Hank.
You made this country a better place to be.
Absolutely. And we actually have another sad
moment. This is kind of tough. Billy Canigliaro just passed away at 73. It must be tough to be the younger brother of a star.
Of a phenom.
Tony Canigliaro.
There he is.
That's Tony C. with my wife.
Yep.
He's from Swampscott originally, and he was always around the park. And actually, in 1970, he and his brother played the outfield for the Red Sox.
Yes, they did.
He had 18 home runs. Tony C. at 36. Between them, they had 54 home runs, which is what Ortiz's team record is.
Right. Between
but who's Tony C? Because he was. I mean, who's this
Billy
guy?
C, yeah.
Billy C.
He's Tony's younger brother.
It's like who's Billy Ripken?
Who's Billy? Yeah, right. Exactly.
It must be tough to be the younger brother. But he was a decent player himself. Actually, he was a better fielder and a better runner.
He was. Yes, he was.
But he wasn't as powerful because he was smaller. And so he was actually driving Tony C. to the airport for a reporter's job in California. And Tony C. had a heart attack. He rushed into the hospital. Tony C. lived 10 more years in a wheelchair.
In the hospice, basically.
Essentially
Right.
in a coma,
Right.
and he cared for him for all that time until he finally passed away.
Yeah, and interestingly, we didn't know this until this show. He is the first ever player drafted by the Red Sox.
1965 is the number one draft choice.
Yes, he was. Right out of Swampscott High, as we said. And he actually got a World Series ring in '73. His last year, he was with the Oakland A's, so he got a ring in his career, too.
That's right.
So.
They didn't have baseball draft until 1965. He was number one. Because, of course, his year before, his brother.
Right, his brher took all the spotlight.
He's got the same genes.
Right.
Like all the Brett boys.
Yeah, right.
All the Molina
all the
boys.
Boones. Yeah. But farewell, Billy C. We
Billy
thought
C.
we'd mention you today as a longtime fixture in the Red Sox organization, even though he wasn't here for long for his career. Everyone knew who Billy C. was.
Okay.
Always around the team.
So every season, folks, what we do is try to have some sort of project that we run throughout the year to give some continuity from show to show. Like last year, we tried to pick the best Red Sox teams from 1900 to 1960 and 1960 to
2020. Yeah. 60 and 60.
And the year before that, the top 5 players at each position
right, yes.
in the major leagues.
We had a good time doing it. We had a great time.
What we're going to do this year is do a show on every week on who should be in the Hall of Fame that isn't.
Right. This is always an argument. Every time the ballot comes up, everyone says, oh, this person, such and such, should be in the Hall of Fame. So we decided to tackle this ourselves.
We're going to make up our own Hall of Fame.
We have our own Hall of Fame ballot.
With a couple new rules. First, you don't have to be retired for 5 years, but you do have to have played 10 years.
Yep. Any 10-year career
So
counts.
another couple of years, Mike Trout could get in.
Sure, right,
okay?
exactly. Yeah.
Also, we are adding 4 players that are not in that should be in because we're not dealing with any of the punishments given out to players.
Exactly.
Because for the 1,000th time, the Hall of Fame is simply a museum.
It's a museum.
It's not a shrine.
Right.
It's not Fatima.
It's a history of the game, is what it is. And so
you don't have to go to Lourdes to play there.
Right. So anything, any penalties, any suspicions of steroids, we don't care.
We're not
about
counting
that.
that.
We don't care.
We're counting that. So we're putting in 4 players.
Right.
First, Joe Jackson.
Yes.
Second highest average ever in Major League. And the reason he got suspended because he knew about a fixed game in 1919. He knew about it, but he didn't have any. He didn't do anything.
Right.
He had 375 in that series.
Right.
So he's in. Yeah. Next, Pete Rose.
Pete Rose, of course.
Pete Rose holds the most hits record, and he was suspended for gambling on sports after
he retired, when he was managing. So.
And there was never any real proof that he made any money. He never bet on his own tees, but gambling,
can't have that.
No saints.
But we think it's ridiculous that you have a history of the game museum and Pete Rose is not in it.
It's ridiculous. And then 2 that are still on the ballots, they get 60% or so, but because of the suspicion, they've never been proved. Right. Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds. Bonds holds the home run record. Mm-hmm. He walked 242 times in one season. And Clemens won 360 games.
Yeah, I don't care what your suspicions are. They never had a positive test.
He won the Cy Young Award 7 times.
Cy Young.
So you go in the Hall of Fame and they're not there.
Yeah. So
they're in.
Those 4 are in, cut and dry. We are disallowing them from the rest of our discussions.
So what we're going to do today is start out with 2 catchers.
2 catchers.
That we think ought to be. But prior to that, one of our show's regular projects.
Oh, good. You put me on the spot.
Trivia.
Oh, good. Another season of trivia.
For the first few seasons we did this show, we just asked a general trivia question, but we didn't seem to receive that many answers through emails or connections. So we got a new system. Mm-hmm. We have the Beast. The Beast.
Thank you.
Who knows all baseball trivia. And I've been trying to stump Jason for 3 seasons and have not done so yet. So I'm going to try to up the
we're going to up the game
up a little bit. Questions you probably get right. Make it a little bit tougher.
Okay.
So since we're talking about all-star catchers, that should be in the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
What catcher holds the major league record for most putouts in his career?
Okay.
Okay? Most putouts in his career.
Interesting.
You
Okay.
think about it till we get through the next section of the show.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
What
Sounds
catcher
good.
has the most putouts in his entire career?
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So here are the two folks the two catchers decided should be in the Hall of Fame based on their stats, and one of them is
Active right now.
actually still active. But why don't you go ahead and
Okay,
start?
so I'll start with mine first. And if you're a baseball fan in the 60s, you know all about this guy. This guy's name is Bill Freehan. He was a catcher for the Tigers his entire career. And we talk all the time about putting stats in perspective of the era where they happened. And Freehand's stats don't look like much on the surface, but when you realize he was putting up these stats at the ultimate height of the pitcher's era, it really makes it astounding at what he did. Now, as a catcher, he hit 200 home runs in the 60s and early 70s. He hit 262. He had a 340 on base percentage, which means he walked a lot. Tough to do in that era. And he made 11 All-Star games and had 5 Gold Gloves. Now, he's not someone that springs to mind as a Hall of Famer. He actually, one year he came in second in MVP, and one year he came in third in MVP. Do you know who he lost to? 67, he came in third behind Yaz and Killebrew, and 68, he came in second behind McLean. So that's some tough competition right there if you're losing MVPs
I think
to those
McLean
guys.
was unanimous.
McLean was unanimous. Yes, he was. And and he was the backbone of all those very good Tigers team in the 60s. He led all those pitching staffs with McLean and Lolich. In fact, I didn't know this till I researched him. He and Lolich, now this is when he retired, he and Lolich teamed up for a game 324 times. That was the record at the time he retired.
Wow.
I didn't know that till I researched him. Now, again, at his retirement, which he retired in 1976, I believe it was, he was the all-time fielding percentage leader. He was the all-time career putouts leader. He was the leader in total chances. He was 9th in games played. He was 6th in hit by pitch, which is another way to get on base and make yourself useful. And when he retired, he had 200 homers, 2,500 total bases. Only Bill Dickey and Yogi Berra had more at the time he retired.
Wow.
And
wow.
So that's pretty impressive when you consider he put up those numbers in the 60s and early 70s where Yaz was winning a batting crown when he hit barely over 300. So sadly, he's not doing well health-wise. He's been in hospice for a couple of years. But the good thing that's come out of that is he's been one of the leading, maybe the biggest one in baseball, talking about concussion protocol. They really believe that his health issues stem from all the concussions he took when he was playing. Because in the 60s and 70s, you just bowled over the catcher. There were no rules about that. The Pete Rose taking out Fosse. That's my pick. Bill Freehan from the Tigers. Look him up. There aren't many catchers that played in 11 All-Star games. He's one of the very few that did it. And so I think he's a Hall of Famer. In fact, I think among non-active catchers, he's far and away the one to pick.
When I think of him most is that he killed the Red Sox.
Yes, he did.
We went to a doubleheader once, and he got the winning hit in the 9th inning of both games. I was hoarse for a week.
Damn friend.
He just seemed to always have. Some guys have teams numbers.
They do. Yeah, they do.
He massacred the Red Sox. Of course, their pitching wasn't that much.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
It was just always Bill Freehan.
Maybe we should do a show about that. Guys who have killed the Sox in the past. We can come up with a few of those.
That'd have to be a whole series.
Right. Right. So my favorite all-time was the Sox killer was Rance Mulliniks from the Blue Jays. Remember him? Total nondescript guy who just destroyed the Red Sox for some reason. So.
And it wasn't always the stars.
No, it wasn't. No, it was. Remember Geronimo Hill from the Orioles always used to kill the Sox too. But anyway,
that'd be kind of fun to make up. See, you can find out through the internet.
Yeah, sure. Make up a team of Red Sox killers.
What guys hit the Red Sox best?
There's an idea. See. This is real live television, folks. This is not scripted. We just come up with this on the spot, so now we have an idea for a new show. So, anyway, I have Bill Freehan. You take over.
Okay, now I'm taking a guy that's still playing. Yadier Molina, the youngest of the Molina catchers.
Excellent choice.
It's amazing that one family could produce 3 Major League ball players that played the same position.
Right.
How did they hang out at home? Who did?
Yeah, right. The dad must have had a sore arm.
They all play the same position, all built the same way, look the same way. But Yadier is definitely the best one. He's played with the Cardinals. He just re-signed.
Yes, he did. I think he's coming back for one last year.
Yep, one. At the present time, so these stats are still to be added to. He's broken 2,000 hits. He's got 281 lifetime average, which is terrific for a catcher.
Absolutely.
He was in 9 All-Star games, and here's his reason I'm putting him in the Hall of Fame. He's got 9 Gold Gloves. Probably, arguably, the best defensive catcher, maybe ever.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
He has a 995 lifetime fielding average, and this is the stat that blows me away. He has a 40% of throwing out base runners.
That's really amazing.
Jason Veritek's percentage was 18.
Yeah.
Less than half that. 40%. He's been the MVP fourth and third, and his postseason, he's played in 101 games and has 101 hits.
101 hits. So
You just don't run on this guy. It's just that's how many catchers start out as catchers, and the wear and tear on them is so great that they switch over like Buster Posey.
Carlton Fisk.
Switch over to first base. To be able to play your entire career this long at that demanding position, and he's not a little guy. He's a big, solid man.
Yes.
To be able to put up with that, I think he's only played 20 games as DH when he actually played.
No, he's always been a catcher.
Always been a catcher.
Always.
But that stat about throwing people out 40% of the time,
That's
just
amazing.
just
if you don't run on the guy,
and that's that they don't.
No,
that's what it amounts to.
No, it shuts down the running game.
It's like when Tony Pena was with the Red Sox.
Right, yeah, just didn't run on him.
Why run on him? You're going to get thrown out.
So when you're filling out your Hall of Fame ballots in the future, remember Bill Freehan and Yadier Molina for your at-home ballots.
That's our picks.
So those are our picks for this show.
So, trivia question was, what player has the most putouts in his career?
All right. So let me put away my Bill Freehan notes here. I am guessing because we were just talking about people who stayed at catcher their entire career, and I have a couple I have it narrowed down to that stayed catcher the whole time, but I'm going to guess that it's Pudge Rodriguez. I'm going to guess. It is Pudge Rodriguez. It is Pudge. Yes. It is Pudge. Yes. Well, Pudge played his whole career at catcher. I mean, he DH'd a little bit at the end, but 150 games every year. And, oddly, I almost thought of, and you wouldn't think of him at first, I would love to see where Jason Kendall is on that list. Is he third? Really?
He's third.
Is he?
Yep,
Yes.
he's third.
I remember him catching a long, long time.
I can't beat the beast. I'm sorry. I just can't do it. I remember when I told my wife what I was going to do for the question. She said, "Oh, he'll never get that."
We talked about Pudge last season when we were filling out our.
He has
our
1,000 more putouts than any other catcher, and you know who's second?
Who?
Molina.
Is he really?
Molina is second.
Wow.
So if he could get 1,000 more by the time his career ends, he could take over the spot.
Is he He's really second. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, Irod played for about 7 different teams, mostly with Texas.
Right. Yeah.
But he played with other teams. He even played for the Yankees for a little while.
He sure did. Yeah.
But he was.
He was a talent.
And he is in the Hall of Fame,
yes.
by the way. He is.
He was a talent. He really was.
So if anybody out there picked that up, good for you.
Pudge Jr.
A plus.
Well, speaking of Hall of Fame, that kind of brings us around to our talking point of this show.
Our major talking point.
A major talking point. Well, as you may have noticed, every year there's a Hall of Fame and election process, and the ballots go out to the writers, and writers send in their filled out ballots, and there's a tracker every year of, this person has 68% with 100 ballots still to go. Well, this year, the writers took it upon themselves to elect no one to the Baseball Hall of Fame this year.
Maybe for the amateurs out there, the way the Hall of Fame in baseball works, and we're going to talk about some other Halls of Fame, there are about 500 writers. They're sports writers. That's it.
Right.
No other executives, ex-players, 500 sports writers that cast a ballot for all the people that are eligible. They have to have played 10 years.
10 years. That's
so
the only
get a ballot.
requirement.
Now, a lot of the 10-year players get no votes.
Right. many.
In fact, I remember Peter Gammon say he voted for Jerry Remy so Remy could say he got one
He got
vote.
one All-Star.
One
in the Hall of
All-Star
Fame vote. One Hall of
But
Fame
you
vote,
have
yes.
to get at least 5% of the votes to stay on the ballot for the next year, and you are voted on for 10 consecutive years. If you don't make it after 10 consecutive years, you're taken off the ballot, and there's an old timers committee.
Veterans committee.
Veterans committee can rethink this. It seems to me you're either a Hall of Famer the first year or you ain't. You don't get better as the
Right.
time goes on.
Right.
Sometimes, though, there's a block because 2 or 3 superstars come ahead of
Absolutely.
you.
Right.
It
Right.
shouldn't be that way, but
Right.
that's the way
Right.
it
But
is.
that's the way some people
But this year, they voted for no one.
No one, which is
So
really
last year, they voted for 4, but they couldn't hold the ceremony because of COVID.
right.
So there will be a Hall of Fame ceremony this year.
Right.
But they voted for nobody.
Right, like Jeter's going in
Which
this
hadn't
year
happened.
instead. Right,
Which
right.
hadn't happened since I think 1958. Sometime quite a while ago.
And it's really amazing. Every year we fill out our All-Star ballots and say who we would have voted for. I had 7 people that I would have voted for, and I probably could have been talked into 2 others. I was really borderline on them. So to have that rich a choice of players and you pick nobody, to me that's just shirking your responsibility, in my opinion. I mean, that's having an agenda.
Now,
it really is.
we'll back up. We've talked about this before. Picking the Hall of Fame began in 1938. So it was easy then because
Yeah.
they put in Cy Young and
All
they
the
put in Walter
superstars,
Matthews.
right.
Those for the first couple of years, it was the overlooked stars. But by the mid-40s, they weeded out all the players from the past and started to elect them. Only the writers voted because only the writers saw all the games.
Right.
There was no television.
Right.
You didn't really see television televising all the games pretty much until the 60s.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah.
In 1956, I remember, the Red Sox broadcast 18 home games on Sundays.
Right.
And I'd run over to my grandfather's
Yeah.
house and watch the game.
It was a big deal.
It was a big, oh,
it's a
big
huge deal that they were on
Now,
TV.
you get the baseball channel, you watch all the games all the time.
Right.
So it isn't just the writers that see the games.
Everyone does.
I'd be willing to bet the 2 of us watch more baseball games in a season than the writers.
Oh, I guarantee it.
Because
Absolutely
the writers
guarantee it.
going to a game on their off week is a busman's holiday.
Right.
So they don't see all those many games.
Right.
They can read about them.
Right.
They can see the recaps.
Right.
But they don't actually go to as many games as we do.
Of course not.
And certainly, all the executives, all the scouts, all the different people that can watch ball games. It's not the writers anymore. It shouldn't be strictly them, maybe if even them, because writers have a bias.
Of course they do.
And it's
Of course
not
they do.
always a positive bias.
No, not at all.
And that's what we
No.
want to. That's what we want to
That's
talk
what we
about.
want to talk about is the bias that writers have.
The top vote getter this year, with 71%, was Kurt Schilling.
Now,
Kurt Schilling is maybe a borderline Hall of Famer. He has 219 wins, but he has one of the most remarkable postseason records in all of baseball.
and I believe he's 8th in strikeouts all time. He's
Over-
very high. He's very high.
way
in
over
strike-
3,000 strikeouts.
Way over 3,000.
He's 11-2 in postseason, and of course, he led the Red Sox to their first World Series championship in 2004. They traded to Arizona to get him. He signed with the Red Sox, and he said, "I'm bringing a championship to this town."
And he brought 2.
And he
04
brought
and 07.
actually
He brought 2.
So of course we're a little biased. But the problem with Kurt's
Kurt
Schilling is that he is very, very right wing.
It's very political.
He's very political
Yes.
and makes no bones about it.
Right.
That should have
Absolutely nothing.
zero impact.
Absolutely nothing. I'm sorry. Hall of Fame is what you do on the field. I'm sorry. I mean, it's not a hall of good people. It's a Hall of Fame. It's a hall of ball players.
For you Democrats out there, Tom Brady backed Donald Trump.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
So does that mean you shouldn't vote for him for the Hall of Fame someday because you
Right.
didn't like Donald Trump?
Right.
It's a bias that I think is almost criminal.
Oh, I 100% agree. Because you have writers who have an agenda. Oh, I didn't like this player. Well, Jim Rice had that issue too. There were writers who didn't like Jim Rice, and they were never going to vote for Jim Rice because they didn't get along with him as a person.
A writer's job depends on getting scoops from players.
Right.
Some players don't mind. Some hate it.
Some hate it. Steve Carlton is the ultimate
Steve
one.
Carlton.
Steve Carlton never talked to the writers in his entire career.
Or he wouldn't talk to his players because they might talk to the
Right,
writers.
exactly right.
He was a kind of a nasty, rasty guy.
He really is. He really
and
was.
didn't talk to anybody.
Right.
And he did not get unanimous Hall of Fame
No,
votes.
he didn't. No, he didn't. And this is where what I put more stock in, rather than the writers, I put more stock in what the players think. And the players never had an issue with Schilling. Never. I mean, they didn't always see eye to eye on his politics or his personal life. But in terms of on the ball field, nobody ever had a problem with Curt Schilling on the ball field. And that, to me, means a lot more than a writer's agenda.
Another thing he did was he borrowed about $1 million to start a company in Rhode Island.
Oh, yes.
And it went broke,
Went
so he
bankrupt.
couldn't pay them.
Right.
What's that got to do with pitching?
So he did. He made a bad business venture. Okay, big deal.
Who was the guy that went bankrupt?
Oh, Jack Clark.
Jack Clark
went bankrupt too.
Jack Clark bought 40 antique cars
Yes, that's
and
right.
went bankrupt.
Right.
What's that got to do with the fact that he had a 3-run home and win a World Series?
Right.
You know, it's just it's a biased way of voting.
Well,
you know?
and we talked about right behind Schilling were Clemens and Bonds.
Yeah.
Now, Clemens and Bonds, as we said before, never tested positive for steroids. But because there's suspicion, writers don't vote for them. It doesn't even have to be a true or false, or it doesn't even have to be a factual reason not to vote for someone. You just think they did it, so you can not vote for them.
But not all of it. 60% voted for them,
Right.
and 40%
Right.
didn't.
So
The 40% didn't some kind of born-again Christians
I have no
or something?
idea. No idea.
What's the problem? The guy maybe did drugs, but I'm sure some of the people they voted in.
Some of the people
you
in the
know?
Hall of Fame definitely did.
Certainly
Oh,
did.
Gaylord Perry made no bones about that. He used to scuff the ball his entire career.
It's called getting an advantage.
Exactly.
My favorite story of all time is Whitey Ford,
Right.
who's in the Hall of
Right,
Fame.
right.
He wore a wedding ring
Right.
that he sharpened.
Yep.
So every time he got a ball, he'd rub the ball against the ring to cut the ball so it would curve better. Finally, after about 5 years,
Yeah.
someone from his team was traded and squealed on him.
Right.
So Yogi Berra used
Right.
to sharpen one of the clamps on his spikes.
Right. And he
I mean, on his
On his
bolt,
shin guard.
on shin guard, and he'd scuff up the ball.
He'd do it. Right. I mean,
And remember, Michael Pineda had the tar.
oh,
on his neck?
who was the? There were spitballers back in the
Oh,
day
well.
too that used to throw spitballs all the time.
Going back to the way back,
Oh.
all the balls were they maybe had 2 balls in a game.
Oh God!
By
yeah.
the end of the game, you couldn't see it.
Right, it was
They used Emery board, slippery elm.
Oh,
it was
licorice,
all
shit,
juiced
yeah,
up.
sure,
And
yeah.
so when you threw it in, it would do all kinds of things. You couldn't even see the ball. And that only changed when Carl Mays killed a guy, killed
yeah.
Crawford at
Right.
shortstop.
Right.
So they finally had to make rules that outlaw the spitball.
Right.
But the spitball wasn't completely outlawed,
No, it wasn't.
as we know.
Some people still
some
did
people
it.
still did it. It's simply called getting an advantage.
Of course it
You
is.
have to get an advantage any way you possibly can.
Of course. And so the writers who have an issue with guys who try to take advantage or just have some hidden agenda, I'm sorry, you shouldn't be voting if you have some kind of agenda other than what's on the field. As we said before, run them through the shredder. Take the stats, run them through the shredder, and whoever comes out on top, that's who you
Right,
put in.
right.
I mean, I'm sorry.
Now let's bring up an example, our non-favorite sports writer, Dan Shaughnessy.
Oh, yeah.
Dan Shaughnessy has had a thing against Clemens since he first came to
Or
the
Schilling.
team.
Schilling.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Schilling.
Schilling, since he came to the team. Story. He and Gordon Needs spoke at the Eastwood Club in Fitchburg in March, right after the Sox had just acquired Schilling.
Right. So Schilling wasn't even on the team yet. He hadn't gone to spring training
And
yet.
we were psyched because we almost won in 2003. This guy is coming off a World Series MVP in 2001. Schilling is going to put us over the top. We're psyched. So we go down to listen to these two guys. And Shaughnessy said, you and the team are going to hate Schilling by July. He's a miserable man. He's a miserable teammate. You're all going to hate him. 4 months later, Schilling is dumping champagne on the heads of all the teammates in the clubhouse after they've just swept the Cardinals, saying, This is the greatest Red Sox
Greatest Red
team
Sox
of
team
all
of all
time.
time.
Now, who's wrong there?
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, just to dampen the enthusiasm out of some kind of personal vendetta against this guy.
Right.
Now, he made a big point this year to make sure he was not going to vote. And when the vote came out, the headline in his story was, Schilling will not be darkening the Hall of Fame this year.
Right. Okay.
Now, tell me that's not personal.
Yeah, of course it's personal. And I believe his ballot, he only voted for Jeff Kent.
Yeah.
Wasn't that his ballot? He voted for Jeff Kent, who had no shot at the Hall of Fame.
And who,
whatsoever.
interestingly, was a miserable man.
He was miserable himself.
His
Oh,
team-
worse than Schilling. Oh, Kent was teammates with Barry Bonds, and the team sided with Bonds all the time. They hated Kent.
But he didn't know him because he was in
Right.
the National League.
Right, right.
So,
So our thing is, we should take away the vote from just the writers. Now, not all the writers. If you want to have writers mixed in with some other people who vote, great. But take it away from just the writers.
now what's interesting is that every single sport has a Hall of Fame. Only baseball's Hall of Fame is particularly famous. Can anybody out there in our land, the viewers, tell me where the Bowling Hall of Fame is? I've been there. It's in St. Louis, above the Negro Hall of Fame.
Is it?
But it's just moved to Texas.
Really?
There's a Bowling Hall of Fame.
Yep.
There's a Hockey Hall of Fame in
Toronto. In Toronto. Been
There's
there.
a Basketball Hall of Fame in
In
Springfield.
Springfield, yeah.
But does anybody make a big deal about who's going to get into the Hall of Fame there?
No.
Are there controversies?
Never. Never.
My favorite one is the way football handles
Yes.
its Hall of Fame.
And
I
we
bet
should
you-
look into this.
I bet you didn't know this.
Right.
The Football Hall of Fame is in Canton, Ohio. Any fan can nominate any player.
Good.
Up to 100. If I want to call in, I guess they probably have, I think it's a 3-year retirement
Right,
period.
yeah.
But the thing is about football, how do you figure stats for the center?
Right. The offensive line doesn't have
There's
a way
so
you can
many
stack up
players you
against each
can't
other.
put through the shredder
Sure.
to do that.
Right.
So it has to be picked by people who've seen a lot of games. So you could nominate up to 100 players every year. So I want to call somebody in.
I'm going to vote for Troy Brown this
Okay,
year.
send it
Put
in.
Troy Brown
And they
in.
consider 100 people, a committee of 18, and they're executives,
Yeah.
some ex-players, some
writers. Yep.
but mostly not writers.
Right.
Who is a couple of owners.
Yes.
It's quite a conglomeration of characters. They narrow the field.
Right.
So they take the 100, toss off
And they
something
and they
obviously
put
not-
about down to about
and
20.
they get
I
it
think,
down
right?
to
Yeah.
about 20
Right.
to 15 players. Then another committee,
right.
completely separate, go through that, and they are required,
Right.
get that, required
Right.
to pick 4
Yep.
to 8 players
4,
every
yep.
season.
For minimum. For minimum.
For minimum.
Yeah.
They
And there's
have to
no
have 4.
maximum, I don't believe. There's no maximum.
8.
Is it 8? Oh, it
It's
is 8.
4 to 8.
So 4 to 8.
So every single year, football puts 4 to 8 players in the Hall of Fame.
Good.
So
Good.
that eliminates all the baloney.
Good.
I mean, if you start talking about body enhancement in football, I think you're probably going to find a few.
Just a couple. Just a few
mean,
in there.
I mean,
So-
here's an interesting stat I just heard. In 1960, all of the pro football leagues had 2 men that weighed over 300. Last year, they had 290.
Oh, well, I'm amazed it's even that few.
Do you think they're growing them bigger this year?
No, they're not. No.
So
So-
it's a whole different
so it-
system. It's not a shrine.
No.
It's not a holy place. It's a place just to go and appreciate football and remember some of the players from your era.
And who do you think is best equipped? Who do you think has the best wide knowledge of players? The people like GMs and owners who made trades and watched every game and scouted and tried to get the best guys for their team. They know players better than anyone.
And their job was to evaluate
Right,
players,
exactly.
not to write about bad stuff about them.
Exactly.
You know?
Or how about ex-players? I mean,
Right.
I mean, come on. Who knows better than the guys who are out on the field? And I mean, so I think that's a great idea. Have a conglomerate of owners, GMs, ex-players, writers, fans. Everyone comes in, and then you have a minimum, I would say, I think a minimum of 3 or 4
and
per
I
year.
really
is
like
great.
the idea of having fans nominate people.
Absolutely. 100% agree. 100%. And you know what's funny? I don't think the fans are going to be that far off on who they pick.
Yep.
I really don't.
I mean, there will be
really
homers.
Don't. Of course there are.
There's going to be more Dallas fans.
There's going to be more
probably.
Yankees fans. They get vote. I mean,
do it that way. But just a whole different system that is so outdated now.
It really is.
What writers were responsible for in 1940 ain't what they are in 2020.
Different. And in 2020, guess what? Anyone can be a writer. I can go and start a sports blog, and I can be a writer.
That's right.
So they don't have any particular insight that I wouldn't have.
That's right. All you have to be is a regular baseball beat writer, and they have to accept you.
Right.
But the Patriot Ledger has a person. But it's not all the L.A. Times.
Right.
It's not all the Louisiana Piquet or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it's just such a thorn in our sides that the Hall of Fame is not a holy place.
No, it's a museum.
And it's not a place, I think, that kids should get their idols from anyway.
No.
Idols shouldn't come from people that play sports and make $1 million.
As George Carlin said, if your kid needs a role model and it's not you, you're both screwed.
Yeah, that's right.
So we're going to wrap that up. We are on the clock right now. We only have a couple minutes before our hour is up, and we're going to come to you next time with some more Hall of Fame picks.
And I think next time we should be about the beginning of the baseball season, and we'll try to identify who's on the Red Sox this season.
It'll be a challenge. It'll be fun.
Most of our viewers are Red Sox fans of Red Sox County, but it's a huge turnover, both in philosophy and nature of the game. And Boston is so used to having superstars.
And that's not the case this time.
We don't have Mookie anymore.
No, we don't.
We don't have Ortiz anymore.
Get over it.
But there may be some diamonds in the rough.
We think so.
And we're hoping that Sale can come back by the All-Star game and be what he was. We're hoping that Erod is recovered from his COVID problems. And I'm hoping I can go to a damn game.
Yes, me too.
Before the season's over.
Me too. So thank you. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We appreciate it. As always, contact us. We have an email. You can always write to us. Go out on the Lunenburg Public Access site. We are on there. And thank you for watching. It's been a great 6 seasons. Let's make it 7 great seasons.
And thanks again to Joe McLaughlin and Debbie Lincoln for being the brains behind and the good looks behind our show. And glad to see all the new people out there watching us. We'll try to entertain and inform you as best we can.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you for watching another outstanding program provided to you by Lunenburg Public Access. We're here to serve the community. Lunenburg Public Access is always looking for volunteers to help record town events, high school sports, and town meetings. Please consider helping us out today. To contact us, you can call 617-763-3018 or email us at lunenburgaccess@gmail.com.